Welcome to Sweat Equity, everyone. I'm your host, Richard Cam, and we're here with this episode with Gabe. Now, Sweat Equity, we talk about all things entrepreneurship to see others' journeys, to see how they can help us onto your journey. So thank you for joining us. So let me introduce Gabe here. Gabe is a CrossFit coach at Dynasty Gym. He's the owner-operator of DRVN. He's an amazing cook, an amateur diver, a football lover, and a sprint triathlete.
Yeah.
So welcome, Gabe, to Sweat Equity. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Rich. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. And also we a little coffee. Okay. Chai for you.
Yeah. Cheers.
And I heard you like treats. So I brought you a cookie.
Ooh,
Okay. So we can nibble on that
appreciate it.
as a cheat day during our episode here.
Every day is a cheat day, Rich. That's the secret.
That's why you work hard. So Gabe, tell us a little bit about you. Just a quick synopsis of who Gabe is and why we're here.
All right. Well, originally Gabe was an athlete, and I always thought that was kind of going to be my passion, and then quickly discovered that coaching was, I was better at coaching than I was being an athlete. I always liked sports growing up. I was like cooking, wasn't like the biggest school guy, but I was always into like athletic stuff. So quickly kind of figured out, all right, not so good at this, pretty good at this. Let's dive deeper into this and let's see if we can make a career out of fitness. It's kind of what we did.
What sports were you playing before?
I played soccer growing up. Played a little bit of basketball, although it was pretty short, so that didn't last long. And then I started CrossFit when I was really young. Started CrossFit when I was 16 years old.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So got into that sport really young and quickly decided, hey, like I really like the sport. How can I get more into the sport? So I started competing. And then that kind of spiraled into stopping soccer, putting soccer off to the side, trying to compete more in CrossFit. Started competing in weightlifting with you guys. Yeah, that's kind of where the sport started.
Question: how did you get started in CrossFit at such a young age?
Good question. I was watching a lot of like YouTube videos, as one does, and CrossFit was really big on YouTube at some point in like 2013 or something like that. And so I started watching that, and then that same year in high school, one of our PE teachers was like teaching this kind of introduction. They were calling it fit class, which essentially was just like run 400 meters, do a bunch of burpees, run 400 meters, do a bunch of push-ups. And at the time I was like really big into the gym, like bicep curls, squats, that kind of stuff, like the fun.
That's when I started.
The show muscle.
I started working out at 16 too.
Yeah. And realized like, okay, like I like doing bicep stuff. I like doing squat stuff, but running was like a big thing because I was into soccer, and doing push-ups and air squats, like doing things fast was always really fun. So it kind of seemed like a natural transition to slow down the bodybuilding stuff and move more into like going fast all the time.
So a high school coach.
He
probably did it or was into it.
Yeah.
And then got the kids to do it, right?
Yeah. His name was Mr. Gray.
Shout out to Mr. Gray.
Mr. Gray. Yeah. He really got me into that kind of stuff. And then he taught me weightlifting.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. In grade 11, grade 12, me and my friend, and with a hockey stick. So like everybody starts with like some kind of stick, right? Ours happened to be a hockey stick, and that's kind of how that kind of transitioned. Really bad, right? Like we were all kind of just figuring it out on our own.
Yeah.
But you have to start somewhere.
I mean, that's all we could ask for. I mean, when we used to do the weightlifting program, we ran a couple of things out of high schools as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's great to get young kids into it, and always one or two people kind of stick to it, right?
Yeah.
Next question, have a little fun. What is something that people don't know about you?
So I worked in a kitchen before I got into like the fitness industry and coaching. I lasted about 3 months, and anybody who's worked in the kitchen knows that like it's not fun. It's long hours. It's getting yelled at all the time. It's cutting stuff up. And so I spent essentially like the whole summer. I was staging in this restaurant. I spent the whole summer shucking oysters and cutting onions for like every day from like 3 p.m. to like 11 at night. All I was doing was like cutting onions, shucking oysters, and got really good at it. but quickly realized that's probably not the direction I wanted the rest of my life to go.
If you didn't know, I worked at a restaurant too.
Did you really?
Yeah, when I was 16.
Oh, I'd like to say that was the same age.
The Cactus Club on Robson.
Yeah.
I was a dishwasher.
Yeah.
And then I worked my way up to like a line cook.
Yeah.
But I did that too. So
yeah, I literally was just cutting onions and shucking oysters. Got really good at that.
prep work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I worked at Fable Kitchen. That's on. Yeah, in Kitsilano.
Okay.
Fantastic. Great chef, great people, but it definitely helped me go in a different direction
It's funny you say that, but because chefs in that industry, you work a certain industry hour, but being in fitness, you also work at different industry hours, right?
Yeah.
So different but similar.
Yeah.
Do you remember how you first started at Dynasty?
Yeah. So I was working in another gym prior to, and wasn't like it was good people. Like all across the gyms have good people, right?
Absolutely.
But I knew there was something like potentially missing, and something I could be, somewhere I could be doing better, treated better, that kind of stuff. And so I was looking around different gyms and reached out to Dynasty and talked with the head coach at the time, Taff, and he sat down with me and kind of explained where I was at. Like I'm big into coaching. I want to potentially be in a different gym. You guys have a great space close by, and weightlifting was really big at the time at Dynasty, but also for me, like I really like weightlifting. I was doing a lot of weightlifting cycles just to get better and stronger. And I thought that was really cool. I thought that could be something I didn't really understand fully yet was how to teach weightlifting. Like you teach it in a CrossFit way, right? Which is very different than how you teach it in a way.
Nothing wrong, just different.
No, different. It's like weightlifting is that sport, and CrossFit is the sport of like everything, right? Yeah. So, I thought that would be a unique challenge to like step into a gym that I would learn more from. I feel like I kind of peaked at that my prior gym, and there was only so much more I could do. So stepping into a gym where they offered more classes, they had more, I guess, difficulty levels of like coaching.
So how long ago was that?
That was about 4 years now. 5, maybe even 5 years. Yeah, I've been
time flies.
Yeah, I know.
Time flies when you're having fun and growing, right?
I've been coaching for 10 or 11 years. It's just great. Yeah, so I started coaching probably when I was like 17 or 18. I got into it pretty quick.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to get into that.
Yeah, 10 years later.
So Gabe, tell us a little bit about your childhood background, where you're from, and like, signs that maybe would lead you to this, like being an entrepreneur as you have your own business as well.
Yeah. So only child, lived in Vancouver my whole life, lived in Yaletown, which is like 5 blocks away from the gym. So that's always been really nice. Went to school in Kitsilano, so commuted, did French immersion growing up.
How's your French?
It's not bad. I actually speak with a couple members in French.
Oui.
Just to like, just to like keep reminding myself how to speak French.
Yeah.
And that's been really helpful. But went there again, like in school, liked some classes, but like always gravitated towards like the fitness.
Yeah.
Love PE class. That was always my favorite class.
Who did?
I know a lot of like fitness professionals always like PE class is their favorite. Yeah. And then sports was always a big part of my life. My dad was my first coach.
Nice.
He was my soccer coach from like probably like the age of like 8 all the way up to like I was like 13, and then I started with like another team where he stopped coaching because of work or whatever.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like my first introduction to coaching, I guess, was through my dad. Which it was cool to think about, actually. It's full circle there.
Now you're teaching him.
And now, yeah. So that's kind of where we're at with like the full childhood story.
Starting in the fitness industry, how did you get into it then, since you got in so early? Like, what were you doing? What kind of courses, like what happened? Like, how did it evolve to where we got to now?
Yeah. So again, after peak, like after grade 12, finished that, started at kinesiology at Langara. Strength and conditioning was kind of the main focus. But with strength and conditioning, like I was big into CrossFit at the time, and with strength and conditioning, they're very different focus than CrossFit. Like CrossFit teaches you, okay, we got to do everything together. You got to be really good at running. You got to be really strong. Whereas strength and conditioning, when we were taught it, was two very separate things, right? Like you have a conditioning session, you run, you row, whatever it is, you bike, and then you have your strength session. You have to rest like 8 hours before your strength session and blah, blah. And that was always hard for me to like get behind as being someone who was like brought up doing CrossFit and seeing results, like I was always good at getting strong.
But that's the base though. Like,
Yeah.
I remember when I first started, like, and I took, the personal training and all that kind of stuff too. Like there's like the bodybuilding and the strength conditioning, like, not saying wrong or right, but just the kind of the base of where everyone starts.
Yeah.
And then you build upon that foundation, right?
Yeah. So kinesiology was great. And then kind of halfway through kinesiology, started taking coaching more seriously and started, stepped a little bit away from school, started doing school more part-time, started working more. Cause there's always that thing of like, okay, school's important and work's important. So like, how do you balance those two things, right? Like you want to start your career, but you also want to finish school.
Did you know that you wanted to get into coaching, or like, were you just like, oh, you know what, I'm taking this, I should probably do something with
Yeah.
It's just interesting because for me, I never really thought I would be a coach. Like it was interesting for me because I was always more the athlete.
Yeah. No, 100%. Exactly.
And then for me, I just kind of was like, oh, I like this. And honestly, it was just people just started asking me.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, like, yeah, I guess I coach. That. I mean, you guys know our origin story with Patrick. That's exactly how it started. It was just like, we just started to coach and then it kept growing. And then I was like, oh, this is kind of fun.
Yeah.
And I love coaching still. Like, I don't coach as much as I want to anymore, but that is basically how it happened for me. It wasn't like, I was like, I want to be a coach.
Yeah.
Whereas I think for Patrick was more like, he always wanted to be a coach more, right?
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting how people fall into what, how they
different,
right?
like kind of, interesting.
What's your favorite thing about what you do?
This is going to sound cliche, but like the people, it's always the people. I coach at 6 a.m. 6 a.m. was not the easiest time to wake up at.
Dedicated.
Yeah. And sometimes I coach at 7:30 at night that same day. So like I'll be up at 6 a.m. I'll be out of the gym at like 8 p.m. And at the end of the day, like it's always the people that like make it fun. Like I coach classes because I want to like help essentially like my friends, like we're all family at Dynasty. And I want to like see, Isabel get better. I want to see Nick get better. I want to see this person get better. Right. And so like, that's what really like keeps me coming back, to like continue coaching them and to continue to see them.
Funny question. Are you an introvert or an extrovert naturally?
Definitely an introvert, which is interesting because I feel like most coaches are more extroverted. Like they feed off other people and
so clearly I'm an introvert. So for me, I just get more energy when I'm with people. And I mean, we all get tired, but I enjoy that. But on our last episode, talking to Susie, she's same thing. She's actually an introvert, but her job makes her an extrovert.
Super,
right?
Yeah, I'm super introvert. Like I'll come home at the end of like coaching for 6, 5, 4, however many hours I coach in a row that day, and I'll just like sit on the couch and I'll need like 5 minutes before I can talk to my girlfriend or like before I can start doing anything again, because it's very draining. But like that doesn't mean I don't love it.
Yeah,
it's just like I need some like me time after talking to everybody.
Yeah,
and when you're coaching, like you're getting someone's talking to you from here, someone's talking. It's like it's always go go go, which is like awesome. But it's you definitely need some time to.
There's a lot of input. A lot of input. And even me, I'm an extrovert, but yes, I still need a little time to decompress.
Yeah.
But when I do it, I'm like getting like more energy as I go.
Yeah.
Okay, so coaching at Dynasty. Now let's get into like why we're on this podcast about building your own business. Like, what's the story behind your business and how did you come to the name and let's go talk about that and share that with everyone.
So Driven originally, like essentially like I was the first Driven athlete, in the sense that like what Driven is, it's a remote coaching business, and specifically with CrossFit athletes. And I was always like kind of from an ego perspective, but like I always thought I was the one who could make myself the best because I knew myself the best. So I would always program for myself growing up young. I was 17, 18 years old. I was like, oh, like how can anybody know me better than I know me, right? Young and stupid kid. And so I got really good at making myself better to a certain degree, right? And I was like, okay, like I'm pretty good at making myself better. I'm a good test.
You're using a test yourself as
A guinea pig, essentially. And can I actually do the same thing for somebody else?
Yeah.
And so I reached out to one of my friends at the time. Her name was Chloe. And I was like, hey, would you let me program your workouts for like $5 a month? Right.
Yeah.
Just so that it was a business. Right. I wanted it to be legit.
So when did this start?
This probably started in 2017, 2018.
Oh, so it's been going for a while.
For a long time.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it's been slowly professionalizing it
And building
more and more. Yeah, and just probably just 2 years ago, I made a website. Have an actual business license, doing all these professional things. But yeah, so it started with Chloe, and then she was a good friend at the time. Then it started with another friend of ours. I was like, hey, let me program for you, and it worked. Essentially, all my experience myself was great, and I was able to help other people get better.
and they got better.
Word of mouth.
Yeah.
Word of mouth is powerful.
That's the best way to grow any business, right? It's more powerful than any advertising and marketing.
And so that kind of just snowballed, right? It was then slowly making it more professional, slowly charging more and more. Slowly started doing social media stuff. And honestly, I didn't know if I wanted it to be a business, because I was coaching at the time. It was kind of just I enjoyed
a side thing.
Side.
So what were what's a moment or just some defining moments that kind of made you realize oh, you know what? I kind of want to take this to the next level or continue to grow what I got, because I know there's a lot of people that want to do stuff because they're, maybe good at it. But then also I know people that are really good at stuff that don't want to make money off it, because they find if they make money off it, it actually becomes a chore and they actually don't enjoy it anymore. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I guess sorry, you repeat the question?
Just what were some steps that define you? You know what? I kind of want to take the next step, make this more of a bigger business.
Yeah.
Just kind of casually helping my friends, making a little side money, but making it a full scale business, right? Because like I said, you started in 2017, so that's been a while, right?
8 years.
So in the last maybe 2-3 years, you kind of really stepped it up a bit more, right?
Yeah.
So how did you take that step? What made you do that?
I guess because it was always about building athletes into better athletes, right? So it was always kind of competition, I guess, that drove it. And I saw 1 year it was I had one of my first 2 athletes do a competition, and they did great, and it was a good lot of exposure for me. And that's kind of what moved it into a more positive direction. They competed, they looked good, it made me look good, and I was I can actually put an athlete forth who does a good job and do what I said I would do. And that kind of spiraled into more and more stuff.
Yeah, because they probably did well, and then maybe their other friends hey, you improved a lot.
Yeah, essentially, I think I kind of got the confidence from that, and that's how it snowballed. Is oh, I can actually do this, and people may or may not pay money for me to help them get better, and then I can make them more competitive.
Now, how is the business growing? How has it grown since you incepted? And where are you now?
Yeah. So when I first started, I was probably working with 3 or 4 athletes for fun. It wasn't even it wasn't a business, right? I was making money from coaching classes. I was making money from doing admin stuff. But now, being able to financially support myself obviously through Dynasty and coaching, but also through my own personal venture,
dude,
that's
a big step.
You're essentially what I want to do is create a job for myself where I have stability and also can coach still in person and do all these other things that I love too. So that's kind of been the big thing.
Cheers to that.
Yeah. Creating jobs for yourself.
Well, and making something sustainable for yourself, right?
Yeah.
Because I remember when I first started doing some of the entrepreneur, the coaching stuff, it was hey, I made a couple $100. It was awesome, a little side money. You know what I mean? Yeah, fun.
Yeah.
Oh, I can go out for dinner.
Yeah.
I can buy a pair of shoes or something. It's kind of oh, nice.
Yeah.
But then once you start getting to that next threshold, you're oh, I'm actually making kind of some money off of it. You're oh, I got to kind of take this more seriously. You know what I mean? That's what you want to do.
No, yeah. So, I guess the way I continue to professionalize it, started charging more, outside athletes who weren't friends started reaching out for just acquaintances or people I didn't even know started reaching out. And essentially those athletes were more and more competitive. So I started with athletes who weren't that competitive.
Yeah.
And then someone reached out who was actually already really good, and I made them better.
Nice.
And
Yeah. I mean,
that's more notoriety. That's more.
one that gives you more confidence.
Gives
Too.
you-
Like, because one of the things when you start any business,
Yeah.
it's like you feel like imposter syndrome.
Yes.
You're like,
100%.
am I? Was that a fluke? You know, like I'm not trying to say that, but
No.
sometimes you feel like
Yeah.
that. Is that a fluke?
Yeah.
And then, but then you get a 1 or 2 more and 3 more, and it's
Yeah.
consistent. And you're like, okay, well maybe maybe I know.
I could actually do this.
Yeah, and that's how it starts for most things, right? And no one ever. We all have confidence, but we all still have some self-doubt.
Yeah, I think the imposter syndrome is a big thing. Like not necessarily for me, but like in any job, I think like until you know that you can do it and it's proven that you can do it, then like it's scary.
So what's been a major setback that you had or something, a challenge that got you?
Yeah.
And what is also maybe a big success that you've took that,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, big setback. Like injuries happen with athletes, with myself. The mental side of sports is also really hard, right? So being able to like, sometimes like you don't want to train, right? You have to convince yourself to train.
I never liked to train.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So for me, when I started at Dynasty and was doing all these life-changing things, it was weird. Like I had to almost take a step back from training because I was like, okay, I'm doing a new schedule. I'm in a new environment. Like this is my like second day training there. And so like I experienced a lot of burnout personally, not necessarily with work, but like for myself as an athlete. And that's not like I've been training for 12 years now. For 8 of those years, never once did I have a day where I didn't want to be at the gym. And so that was like a really interesting challenge. I was like, do I want to be a coach anymore?
You start questioning.
Do I want to be an athlete anymore? Do I want to like just cold turkey, like say bye to everything?
Yeah.
And that all stemmed just from like, overtraining and all these big changes that were happening in life. So I think that was kind of like one of the big setbacks that happened, is like doing too much, like too soon, and like forcing it, and also trying to like be an athlete when you're trying to be a coach and when you're trying to transition businesses, when you're doing all these things. It was kind of just like, looking back, recipe for disaster.
We've all had that challenges. Like I do a bunch of multiple things too. And you got to kind of figure out where you want to put most of your energy. Like it sucks because you want to do everything, but that's the thing as you grow and like, you can't do everything. That's the one thing I learned. It sucks, but you got to figure out what you're going to spend more time or effort doing and let not let other things fall back, but you have to pick your spots and times for each thing.
Yeah. So I think that was like a blessing in disguise, because that wouldn't have let me help, that wouldn't have pushed me to do more with Driven, more with my brand. When I was training and competing so much, my brand and coaching was like kind of second, right? And then when I stepped away from competing and training so much, I was like, wow, I can actually invest more time. I'm not tired all the time from training. I can invest more time in my athletes. I can invest more time into learning about more coaching skills. And so like that, honestly, that was a blessing in disguise. Like that was a big challenge for me, because I didn't know if like I would even continue coaching or continue training and all these things. But like now looking back at it, I'm like, thank God it happened, because it helped me be more professional and take further steps forward with my business.
Let's talk about how you work with your athletes. Let's let people know. Tell us how you work with your athletes and how what's your idea of working with them, helping them grow as an athlete.
So I feel like something that separates me a little bit is like, I'm a big believer in like family and support. I've always had a great support system growing up. So I always wanted to be that for my athletes. I always wanted to be able to support them. I wanted them to be able to come to me with small things, with big things. Obviously when you're starting with an athlete, it's very different. You don't have that big long-term relationship. A lot of the athletes I work with now, who I've been working with for a long time, I like to think of them as my family. Like I'm happy to fly somewhere to watch them compete. I'm happy to fly to help coach them. And so like, that's been really important for me, like as a lesson. That's what I wanted to provide for my athletes, is that kind of support system. So that's number one. But essentially what I do is remote programming. So, and what that is I'll write them a program. They want to get better at weightlifting, let's say. I'll write them progressions to help build their snatch if their snatch isn't very good, or if their leg strength is really low, then we'll build squats up. If they want to learn how to bring muscle up, I'll give them the progressions to do that. And then there's feedback. So how did that bring muscle up progression go this week? You'll write in some notes. You'll say, oh, it wasn't that successful. Maybe we need to do this. And I'll be like, oh, awesome. Okay, we'll input that in, adjust. Next week, we do something else. It works. They're like, fantastic. I'm like, fantastic. Make it harder next week. How do we make it better? So essentially that's what remote coaching is. It's this communication process that goes back and forth. We write a program, we change it, we adjust it, we make it better, keep making it better. They hit PRs, fantastic. We're all happy. Let's do it again.
Let's hit PR.
Rinse, wash, repeat.
Let's hit PR.
Let's hit PRs. It's all about PRs. That's how you're getting better, right? Like this whole idea of test to retest. If you do a back squat and you get 100 pounds, 3 months later, you get 120 pounds, you're probably strong, right? Yeah. That's a pretty good, it's a good PR. So essentially that's like kind of what Driven is it's a remote coaching business that's built around this idea of support and making athletes better.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What are your ultimate goals for Driven? And where do you see this going?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. So I think every year it's gotten more professional, and I like to keep the door open. I don't know.
That's a good answer.
Do I want it to be my full-time job? Probably not. I enjoy coaching at Dynasty. I want to stay at Dynasty. I like what I'm doing with Driven. I feel like if I work with a ton of athletes, then my like individual clients will notice that I'm spreading myself too thin, right? So it's a weird thing to say that I'm happy where I'm at.
You know what? I actually like that. I actually like that you brought that point up because a lot of people for business always think about wanting to grow and grow and grow.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like more on my side. I always kind of want to, but I like that you have that foresight of like kind of like you like where you are. Because that actually can be a very good thing.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when you're always chasing the top of the mountain, you don't know when you fall off.
Yeah.
Because you're just always, and that's one of my, like, it could be a pro, but also a con.
Yeah.
Because I always like to grow.
Yeah.
Like my thing is like, I'm just going. I just like, let's keep going. Right. But I know that, but that's really good that you brought that point out, especially on our podcast. Because like I said, we're talking about business and how people are growing their business and where they want to go with it. Yeah. And it actually sounds like you're in a good place right now. Like, you have the athletes you want, you're kind of in that medium, right?
Yeah.
Where
so like
meets your needs.
I think that was always the goal, right? The goal, like, has it been achieved? No, not yet, but it's pretty close.
Okay, so how are we going to achieve that? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. Just continuing, like, we talked about professionalizing again and again, but continuing to build education systems, for myself, continuing to mold people around me to be better coaches too. I've started mentoring some people.
Great. Okay. There you go.
Outside of, this guy named Adam Sharp I've been working with.
So you're scaling. So you're learning, you're on the next step.
Potentially scaling. Yeah. There's been talk about building out, Driven into something bigger than it is. Is that going to happen again? We don't know.
We don't know.
I'm happy where I'm at. Could I be convinced?
I like to hear that
more. Absolutely.
That's exciting to me.
So that's been a new thing this year. That's only started a couple months ago. And it's really exciting.
Okay.
So stay tuned. Yeah,
that's good. I didn't know that.
Maybe bigger and better.
So one piece of advice that I can give, talking about social media, is just being authentic, because I find that it's a lot easier in the long run. What I mean by that is, one of the good examples, when I first started in real estate, I wore a suit and tie because I thought, when you're a real estate agent, you should wear a suit and tie.
Yeah.
So I started wearing a suit and tie, and I didn't feel like it was me. I felt so stuffy.
Yeah.
And, not to say not to be professional, because like I like to dress nice and look good, but the suit and tie just wasn't for me. So it was one of those things that you just kind of develop your own sense of style, like, or the way you like to present yourself or your product or your service.
Yeah.
And I think that's what helped me carry on my brand. Like, I think I keep things light. I'm professional, but like not too serious, right? Like that's kind of what I want to portray for my clients because that's how I'm like.
Right.
Where if I'm just pretending to be all like, all stiff and stuff, I just don't think
the cookie cutter real estate.
It won't work, right? And in the end of the day, like you may detract some people by the way you are, but you're also going to gain people, I hope, right?
And more important than that, maintain people.
Yes.
Right? Like,
because you're not pretending.
For sure. Yeah.
If you're like, I'm driven, I'm doing all this, but like I'm, a robot.
Yeah.
If you're a robot, be a robot.
Yeah.
If you're not, then be you, because people are going to like, hey, Gabe, that was awesome. Like, I like the way you present.
I think with remote coaching too, and any business, like people will buy into who you are as a person. Some people will like you. Some people aren't going to like you.
You're not going to, that's like the hardest thing about any business, because you want to get everyone to like you, but you really can't. You have to find what you're good at, and hopefully those people come.
I used to think that like every athlete I would work with, I can fit their mold, but some people, like some relationships just aren't going to work.
And I'm starting to learn,
you can't force that.
And I'm starting to learn that with my real estate too. It's like sometimes like I work with these kind of clients.
Yeah.
If they're these other ones, it's not that I'm not good. It's just like we don't click as much, right?
Yeah. And it doesn't mean you can't be successful with them. It just means that like it's going to be not as easy or.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's the big one. So we're going to get to the fun part of the show here right in the end. It's called Give Me What You Got.
All right.
It's just rapid fire questions, and you're just going to have some answers. Okay. Okay.
I'm ready.
And we usually drink, but we're drinking coffee right now, so it's fine. So your most hated CrossFit movement?
Oh, thrusters.
Okay.
Yeah. Controversial one.
Snatch or the clean and jerk?
Snatch. It's more technical.
Favorite football team?
Kansas City Chiefs.
Mahomes.
Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce.
No, I'm just kidding.
No, man. Mahomes is great. Yeah.
The best dish you make?
Duck à l'orange. So like, fried duck, like a duck breast.
You hear that?
Mashed potatoes. It's good.
Wow.
It's really
good.
Well, we'll have you over for.
Next place do you like to travel?
We talked about Greece. Talk about going to Greece next.
I've never been, so that's on my list too.
Oh, okay.
What's your next PR you want?
I would love, we talked a little bit about triathlon at the beginning. I would love to improve my triathlon time from last year. It's not something like I'm avidly pursuing, but it's something different. Like I did weightlifting for so long. I've done gymnastics, I've done CrossFit, but triathlon's such like a different sport from all of them. So that'd be fun. That'd be fun to try.
Are you a glass half full or half empty kind of guy?
Oh, I'm always a glass full, half full guy. I'm like radiating positivity. My girlfriend hates it sometimes.
What's your vice?
My vice? Oh, poker. I used to play poker.
Nice.
I haven't played poker in a long time.
All right.
But yeah, I'm a big card game guy. I like stats, I like statistics, and like percentages and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So where can we find you? And, tell us a little about your service so people can reach you.
Driven Program. You can find me at drivenprogram.com. You can find me Driven Program on Instagram. If you're interested in CrossFit coaching, remote coaching, in-person coaching, come to Dynasty. Work with me. Gymnastics, really good at gymnastics, weightlifting, all that kind of stuff. But if you want some help with CrossFit performance coaching, I'm your guy.
You're the guy right here, Gabe. So let's have a bite of our cookie, and let's finish our interview.
Love it.
I got you chocolate and walnut.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully you're not allergic to that.
Chocolate's the best.
Cheers. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Sweat Equity. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.